time for some baseball handicapping and betting tips. I am America's only Grandmaster Handicapper, Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. And although, as you know, I am the winningest handicapper in all sports combined, way back in the 1980s when I was on the Score Phone's JD of the ACC, a lot of you will remember me by where I really first became a handicapping legend and icon was in Major League Baseball with our dominance of small favorites and underdogs. Now, what is my secret? I'll be honest with you. It's not quite as difficult as it seems. Now, granted, it's all a lot of hard work goes into it, knowing where to get the right information, but conventional logic is the biggest oxymoron in sports betting, and that's high on our list of golden rules. Here's something that so few bettors realize, and this is why the sports books make so much money. Sit down for this one. Here is a dirty little secret. The odds makers put way too much emphasis on pitching. The old cliche, you got to zig while the others zag. That is so true when it comes to baseball handicapping. The odds are based so much on pitching. But take a look at it, folks. The teams that quote-unquote win with pitching, they're the teams that have the better offenses. And I was arguing with a square bettor earlier this year, a friend of mine, and I said, okay, well, since pitching is 70% of the game or 80% of the game, whatever the cliche says, how about we make a bet this year? Who's going to have a better return on investment? If you bet on every game that Joe Blanton pitches, Blanton, of course, the number 5 starter for the Phillies, or if you want to talk about Hernandez for Seattle, who is arguably the best pitcher in baseball. And I said, well, you should give me, obviously we're talking about the best pitcher in baseball compared to maybe the 200-and-something best pitcher. You should probably give me at least 3-to-1 odds, right? And he backed out of it. Well, again, and one of the reasons I said the Phillies, they are my favorite team, but just take a look at the 2009 numbers of Roy Oswalt when he was with the Phillies, and then when he went to the Astros. Well, my point well made. Now, one of the things that Major League betting in fantasy baseball, or playing fantasy baseball and rotisserie baseball, teaches you is that hitting is the more constant. Folks, if you took a blue ribbon panel at the end of the year, whoever it may be, Peter Gammons or, your dream team panel or anybody that knows anything about baseball, and ask them to come up with the 25 biggest disappointments, 25 biggest surprises in Major League Baseball throughout the year, or 50, or whatever the number is, a highly disproportionate number of them will be pitchers. It's just that simple. Good hitting comes from good hitters. Good pitching, it often just comes from hot pitchers. Injuries to big bats kind of sneak under the wire when it comes to the odds. Of course, the odds makers adjust, but they don't adjust enough sometimes. And matchups, another overused word when it comes to handicapping. One of the things I found out in my handicapping, for the most part, the superior teams always match up better against the inferior teams. It's pretty simple. And when it comes to stuff like basketball, especially football, college football, even more so than professional football, comes to situations more so than matchups. Although matchups are important, but in baseball, without question, it is where it is most important. Certain teams are going to be fastball hitting teams, speed teams, more so in ballparks. You take a look at how pitchers have pitched significantly better in certain ballparks. That holds up in handicapping, or how hitters match up against a pitcher. There's certain guys that are fastball hitters, curveball hitters, certain guys that struggle against knuckleballers, maybe a finesse pitcher like Radke or Nagel in the past. We found out some great mismatches there. We did very well betting for or against those pitchers in certain situations. But matchups much more important in baseball than in any other sport, as are the home road splits. Now, home road splits are important in other sports, but in previous podcasts, we've told you how it's actually overused or really abused in basketball, that there is a proper way to use home road splits in basketball, and it's not the way the squares use it. But in baseball, you know what? There is where we do weigh home and road statistics much more heavily than in any other sport. Well, at OffshoreInsiders.com, we're ecstatic. We continue to add to the arsenal the Canadian crew we added earlier this year. Bill Tanner, who has for a long time been on the Super Lock line over on our Score Phone days, and now the Master Lock line, as it's known at OffshoreInsiders.com. He is exclusively, we've had on and off discussions literally for years with this guy. His plays are now exclusively at OffshoreInsiders.com. And, of course, my picks are at God's Tips, which is the anchor of OffshoreInsiders.com.